Hey everyone, hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. As always, muchas gracias to everyone for everyone's words, wishes, prayers, as the love and support everyone shares with me. From the heart, gracias. Also, do please like, share, subscribe, and hype the video if it's somewhat to your liking to help the message get out there a little bit. Thank you. Well, everyone, today I'm going to touch on a question a homie asked me to touch on. And, well, I'm going to try my best. At least I only speak about my personal experience, right, with things. And it's going to circle around Tio Pio, Grandpa from Venice, and 38th Street homies, right? Or gang. But, anyways, I hope I don't lose you. This was amongst years, right? The collective of this. It wasn't like a one event type of thing. But first off, I take you back. It had to be 97 already. We're in San Quentin. And as you guys know who my first celly was, it was a big reality check, to be sincere, as a blessing, right? Because amongst a lot of things, it was, you're going in as a lifer, reckless. You think you're doing things wrong, then you get your ears smacked back. Hey, slow your roll, because you're going to ruin your career. Matching that without a release date, right? So, of course, you pay attention. But in this, R did a lot of things for me that he shouldn't have. For example, I'll make it real clear. He never spoke ill about one of his brothers. He did, though, show me love in the sense of telling me about him a little bit, right? Again, I was wet behind the ears. I was born and raised in Northern California, even though I knew of some names, because, we're repping and we had to. I didn't really know Billy like that, right? And, anyways, in the sense I'm speaking of is, for example, Guate, boxer, get this individual and that, stay away from him. He's like this, tú sabes. One of this was Tio Pio. Tio Pio came up and basically I was warned to stay away from him. He used to tempt to forget about who was underneath him. And it wasn't because illness or something. It was just how much power this individual had at one point. He had a lot of people right underneath him. It's sad to say there's a lot of people that are doing all day in Mexican prisons that were underneath him. But that got forgotten. But anyways, that's a whole different topic, right? At the moment, Raul told me just don't, he's power hungry. He gave me an example that I'll share with you. He says, for example, you can meet him here or however you run across him, and a little while goes by, you don't report, you're not bringing nothing relevant to the table, and then you get to a yard where you could basically do something, right? And you start trying to plant that flag because you got the okay from Tio Pio to do so. But when they reach out to him, he don't recall you. So now it comes within the one you're trying to represent to clip you. It was that type of thing, right? I say this to say the one thing that Raul spoke ill about Grandpa from Venice was he was real close with Tio Pio, you know. But he did say, you ever run across that camarada, sit your butt down and hear the clecha he has to give you. because he knows how to swim in them waters amongst Billy's, earn his respect, and keep pushing as a camarada, right? Again, I never had the pleasure of meeting Grandpa from Venice, the old man, in person or through kite, nada. It was all through personal experience that camarada shared with me, right? Which everything I heard was good about the homie. Again, the only thing was, you know, this was 97, so he was real heard of for peace treating, I guess he caused in Venice, right? With the homies in the black neighborhoods or black neighborhoods, something to that effect. But after, I guess, he went in for whatever and he came out, he was assigned to go to 38th Street and basically be the mediator between 38 and the Peelies, right? And he was good at what he did. You know, as far as I know, he was plugged into, well, to a state of Mexico. We'll just leave it at that, right? And he was representing the homies from 38. But going back a little bit, one time there was a little issue that happened on the upper yard in San Quentin. So we got taken to, I believe it was East Block Overflow or Carson, one of them two overflow because of the riot. And I met the homie Puppet, older homie. Um, he was there on a layover, right? He was heading up to the bay from Corcoran Shoe. And basically, we exchanged three ways. You know, he asked me about my celly that he didn't know it was my celly. I didn't say it was my celly, but he asked me, so you know he had some type of knowledge. And anyways, I took it to heart. You know, when it came to Grandpa, Puppet was working real close with Grandpa to establish something on 38. And you know, in a sense, I wanted that clecha per se. You know, if I ever, well, anyways, that's not important. The thing is, I went back to West Block, and right away, Raul pulled me back in the cell, and I mentioned I ran across the camarada, and nothing but good was spoken about Puppet. He's saying there, George, or excuse me, Grandpa and Puppet at one point were like uña y mugre, right? That to basically that's a good homie to have around you, right? As well. So I maintained contact with him. Now, fast forwarding a couple years, you know, I left San Quentin. The next time I heard about Grandpa from Venice was in Ironwood when I had, you could say, my first experience having a jardín by myself. And in this jardín, I spoken about Smiley from 38. Also, Sneaky from Venice was there, and Sapo from Santa Monica. And all three of them were in contact with Grandpa, you know. So I started picking up what was going on. And when I say there really is good gente amongst our program, right? That think about camaradas, that try to do the best for a camarada to make a homie, right? Is what you would consider Grandpa, you know. I never heard nothing negative about him. And as much as I know he was loved by 38th Street throughout my whole time, right? Most of the camaradas I ran across from 38, they had some type of esteem for for him. But what I want to talk about is the inevitable. What's going to happen, right? I always speak about good people always being trumped and pushed aside by the mentality that unfortunately maintains power, right? When it comes to them, I heard from Smiley there was once an issue, right, where they were trying to blame a loss on the homies from 38, and basically, you know, Grandpa spoke up. He literally spoke up with full force for 38, which in reality it was a dangerous move, right? But again, it was different times where Sureños had a lot more say so than what you see today. You know, a trusted camarada was literally that. You know, a camarada of the clica, and it was respected for his point of views. Now you're a Southsider, Sureño, camarada, campolero. It really has no meaning to the way that the clica looks towards the Sur movement, right? They literally, if you really think about it, have separated themselves. The only ones attached to the movement per se is camaradas. But anyways, he spoke up and he cleared that. I don't want to say that individual's name trying to push that on George, on 38, excuse me, but he was on Marta, right? And he pushed back, which in reality I think what really never became an issue was because maybe a year, 2 years later is when Homeboy changed sexes and started walking backwards, right? And he kept pushing up until the point where he would get caught again in a RICO with 38th Street for numerous cases, right? And anyways, the camarada that told me to basically put out my experience. My experience was, I always thought of Grandpa as a good, solid camarada. To be honest, is what I wanted. I know my son don't, or whatever, right? But I wanted him, if I was going to do my life in prison, was like a trusted camarada, right? One that could actually have some type of voice for camaradas, period, point blank, for many things that I had seen over the years. But, anyways, the point of the story is the next. The fact is, they never forgot that George at one point pushed for the opium, and unfortunately, I spoke about Puppet. He got removed first up in the Bay. Then, shortly after that, is when they politic against Grandpa, not just for being with Tio Pio, but because of his age. You see, they could have done this on the calles, right? Old man still holding tough, being the mediator for money making when it came to them in 38th Street. But when he got busted, is when all of a sudden the age became a problem. Your dead weight. A lot of people seem to forget, that word does exist amongst our movement. Of course, you don't hear about it now too much because there's no more shoes. But back in the days when you weren't relevant to bring to the table, Or for example, like I'm speaking, be the mediator of what's coming in and out, right? From a neighborhood, from an old, solid neighborhood to the Pilis in many directions. All of a sudden, they did what they did with Chino from the F, from Dopey from Tortilla Flats. Well, I could go on. Dopey ended up in a wheelchair due to a riot representing La M. Got paralyzed. All of a sudden, is a medical facility. He's irrelevant. Grandpa was about to start going off in due time. As an old man, he's no longer on the streets providing. He's dead weight. You see, this word that I say dead weight did not come from me or a camarada. I personally heard it from Pilis. Hey, he's taking up space. He's dead weight. Handle him. I myself at one point asked, is there something wrong with his papitos? Or no, he's just dead weight. Deal with that. He's taking space from a good camarada. Remember the case I caught in Corcoran? It was exactly that. And basically, that's the end look on this one. You could go on. George Grandpa's a perfect example. He did good in Venice, as he was supposed to as a camarada. He was good with 38, trusted, held tough, held solid till he got sentenced. Damn, you're irrelevant. There is, and there should never be expected, right? A pat on the back. I understand that. Retirement. But why not that respect? They knew his age. The thing was, it was more of a politic move on his son, right? But anyways, why not tell him on the street, hey, camarada, you done enough, step down, let so-and-so take control, put him up on game. No, they didn't want to lose that, right? Greed was more important. They allowed him to get caught up, sentence, one sentence. And in reality, when you think about it, age like that, a years could be a death sentence. Then all of a sudden oh, you're no good. You're dead weight. Hey, your homie Simone, handle that. Go ahead. All of a sudden, you got a camarada putting steel in you for no reason, but for being loyal for decades. Think about that. I'm glad the homie asked me to touch on him because I've been meaning to touch. You, everyone asks me if I run across good people. I will be touching on that a lot more, and definitely, Grandpa was a good individual that unfortunately, stayed solid till he shouldn't have. Let's just be sincere as a camarada. It comes a term where you gotta say, hey, I can't hold on to the ball no more. I gotta let go. But again, I guess I was the same idiot, right? I always fool myself to keep pushing. And in reality, what the game is, what you can bring to the table. Remember, the causa has become a Tecato movement because that's all we do. Follow their dope, bring dope to them, be mediators for money making, for their vitamin. And if not, that's exactly the words you're going to use. You're in the way, you're dead weight, you're taking space. So again, if you're there, just saying out to you, you're already there, boogie, bug down. Just know how to move throughout what's going on. Nobody could tell you how to move better than yourself that you're there. Listen in, look for those that haven't been there. Again, it's beautiful to be from your neighborhood, your homies, but don't let it become something permanent as giving your life and go to prison or getting stuck. You know, always value what's loyal to you, true to you. Stay true to yourself and loyal to your loved ones. God bless everyone.